The African economic outlook before us makes it clear that for most of Africa, the MDG target on safe water supply and adequate sanitation cannot be met. Except in North Africa and a few countries in sub-Saharan Africa, progress remains inadequate. For the majority of the African countries, low access to safe water supply and inadequate sanitation are the root causes of many diseases and a contributory factor to the high infant and maternal mortality rates. Supplying clean water and improving sanitation can therefore have multiple benefits that contribute to the achievement of the MDGs. Let me highlight a few specific examples to illustrate the overwhelming impact of access to basic water and sanitation. In Ghana, it is estimated that access to safe drinking water would reduce the risk of diarrhea by 70%. Similarly, in Uganda, improved sanitation would cut the risk of infant mortality by 40%. Thus, if Africa is to enhance progress towards the MDGs, the prioritization and financing of water and sanitation infrastructure must be scaled up. Needless to say, Africa's progress towards the key MDG targets for drinking water and sanitation of 78% and 69%, respectively, by 2015, depends to a large extent on the degree with which resources, both internal and external, in the continent are scaled up and their quality improved. Domestic sources, especially gains in tax efficiency, are expected to provide a significant amount of the resources, but it is clear that official development assistance will need to be scaled up significantly. Certainly, the challenges of financing the rehabilitation and development of water and sanitation are prohibitive for either the public or the private sector acting alone. Partnerships to facilitate private sector participation, a redefined role for the public sector, local community participation, regional and continental organization, and international donor involvements are all requisite ingredients. In the past, the provision of water and sanitation infrastructure in Africa has largely been the preserve of government. Given the central role assigned to water and sanitation in development and the availability of private capital flows that can benefit the sector, we need to rethink the development of water and sanitation infrastructure. The mobilization of increased ODA resources is possibly the most pressing challenge for donors. In the last decade, the distribution of aid resources to water and sanitation infrastructure has largely been inadequate. There is a strong case to reverse this trend in ODA allocations. However, beyond the mobilization of resources, we also need to rethink how to use ODA to leverage private and other public resources more efficiently. Of equal importance must also be the realization of the fact that returns to investment in water and sanitation are realized over the medium to long term, or otherwise in terms of social as opposed to economic returns. Thus, the terms of lending for water and sanitation infrastructure projects must be soft enough to be compatible with debt sustainability. In the need to scale up ODA to water and sanitation, Africa has to look beyond traditional OECD DAC countries that have hitherto provided the bulk of resource requirements for water and sanitation. Emerging donors, including non-DAC OECD members and non-OECD countries such as China, Estonia, India, Israel, and Kuwait, have more recently been seen as playing an increasingly important role in development financing of developing countries. Africa needs to impress upon these donors that water and sanitation infrastructure is key to the development efforts of Africa. It should, however, be stressed that the additional effort by the emerging donors should be coordinated with the traditional donors for Africa to derive full benefits of all the financing. The issue of attracting private investors to the water and sanitation sector in Africa must remain paramount. In this regard, the successful reforms that have swept through the continent in the last decade have opened up opportunities for financing water and sanitation infrastructure by the private sector. There are several cases in Africa where water and sanitation infrastructure projects generate revenue through charging user fees, which makes private sector participation attractive. The added advantage of this participation is to tap into efficiency of project implementation and sound management of infrastructure facilities by the private sector. However, we must remain cognizant of the dangers of such partnership. There is need to negotiate private-public partnership in a manner that promotes better risk and equitable profit sharing. It would be unfair to the public sector if the private sector was to use the partnership to transfer all project risks to the public sector. The African Development Bank Group recognizes the challenges involved in improving water and sanitation infrastructure in Africa and attaches great importance to the promotion of this infrastructure in our regional member countries. Let me highlight some of the major ways that the bank is assisting regional member countries in water and sanitation sector. In 2002, the bank conceived the Rural Water and Sanitation Initiative to accelerate access to water supply and sanitation services in rural areas to reach 80% by 2015 and extend water supply and sanitation services to 277 million and 295 million people, respectively. The bank is committed to financing 30% of the needs and is encouraging other stakeholders to contribute. Also, since 2006, the bank has been hosting the African Water Facility aimed at addressing the funding gap. The amounts so far committed for the African Water Facility is about Euro 60 million from Canada, France, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Austria, and the EU. The bank itself is has committed about Euro 1.8 million to cover permanent staff, management, and other administrative costs. Certainly, these contributions remain modest, with significant unfinished business, and quite rightly so. The bank is increasingly being called upon to do more. The bank will continue to play the important role in coordinating emerging donors' projects in Africa so as to ensure best practices, prevent duplication of efforts, and maximize synergies across donors. Moreover, the bank will invite emerging countries to have a greater role in its operations through technical assistance and participation. I thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.